Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. Hope everybody's having a great weekend out there and wherever you are, Bill. I am Max. I'll be your host. And, yeah, I was going to say, oh, who am I? Captain Thundernuts? Perfect. Sounds great. Wonderful. Thank you for being here. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe, like, notify, share. And let's get this going. Let's recap first. On episode 1, we went and talked about what if of Michael Jordan, and instead of the Wizards, what if he had his choice, knowing what we know now that the Wizards were going to release him or no longer need his services after he played 2 seasons, and that would have been the end of the 03 season being his last. So from the 01-02 and 02-03 season is when we saw Michael Jordan last play basketball on the court. Then my take on that was 2 teams. If he would have stayed in the East, I believe that he would have went and played with the Magic and had the opportunity to play with his good friend Patrick Ewing, and possibly again reunite with Horace, which they picked up also that year. And potentially there was the opportunity to also play again with Scotty, and you can even go as far as maybe Barkley even, or it's hard to say, but Orlando is where I thought we would have seen him. But the other team that I thought would have been more likely than not, if everything stayed the way it did, it would have been the Lakers in the West. It would have been because of Phil and Michael's loyalty to Phil, and I think that would have been probably really fun to watch. But I also believe that instead of being the bus driver like he was when he was with the Bulls or when he was with the Wizards for that short amount of time at a advanced age, if you want to call it that, then for all things considered, there's really nothing to complain about. He did what Michael did. Michael was still Michael. So that was episode 1. Episode 2 was the final retirement. The second retirement. This would have been after the 98 season, the second three-peat, after they'd beaten the Jazz. What The Last Dance was based on when it comes down to, the theme of that season, which Phil liked to do, and the fact that everybody knew that the relationship between Reinsdorf and Jordan and Krause and Jackson was its own drama within drama. So it was clear, and everybody knew, that Phil's services would not be retained after the 98 season. Therefore, Michael and his loyalty to Phil, basically, like I'd said before, it was almost like a forced retirement because Phil wasn't coming back, neither was Michael. And at that point, the team started breaking up. Players started going elsewhere. And since then, the Bulls have never been able to mimic that kind of success, winning any more championships or anything of the such, or the sort. Excuse my pronunciation. But one thing that I can say is even with those 6 championships that the Bulls won, that puts them third place all time in championships won for the NBA. The first place Celtics, my squad. My squad was still the Celtics back then. Doesn't mean I didn't love to watch Jordan, the Bulls play. It was amazing. It was incredible. If you didn't see it, then you don't understand. You just don't know. It's all right. Go back and watch some of that. Then you watch what you see in the background over here playing. And this is the kind of stuff that you would look forward to and expect to see out of Jordan every game. And this is what he would produce. Just amazing plays, no excuses. I mean, if you're relatively the same age, close to 50 years old, then you've seen Jordan play and you understand. And that's not taken away from anybody before Jordan or anybody with maybe one exception that has been there after Jordan has retired that has really wowed everybody. But that's my opinion, and I'll keep it to myself. But we talked about that and whether or not that team was kept together, would they have continued to win championships? And I thought that even with them being an older squad, they still would have been able to get one championship because the 99 season would have been a godsend to them only because it was a strike shortened year. The Spurs, they ended up winning the championship that year with the Twin Towers, Duncan and Robinson, and they beat the Knicks in that series. So that was the second time the Knicks had gotten beaten in the 90s. A lot of people don't ever remember that the Knicks played 2 championship series in the 90s. One was against Houston, which we'll talk about, and then the other one, like I just mentioned, was against the Spurs in 99. But with that strike shortened season, it would have been less games for an older team. They probably would have been able to put some pieces together in order to get that team to where it needed to be competitive, in addition to having Jordan, presumably Pittman, Kerr, Harper, Longley, Kukoc, Rodman. As far as Scott Burrell goes, I don't know if we would have kept Scott Burrell, Kerr. I'm pretty sure Kerr would have still been retained. As far as, anybody else, I can't remember if Bill Winnington was still there or not. I cannot recall. He might have been. I believe he was. I know Purdue was gone. So I think it was Bill Winnington and Luke Longley as far as centers go for the Bulls at that period and that point in time. So good chance they would have been retained. And, nobody was stopping Shaq. Shaq was the guy back then as far as big men goes. Nobody was fucking Shaq. Well, I mean Jordan would, but other than that, nobody was fucking with Shaq. Shaq was unstoppable inside. You couldn't do anything except for, instead of the Jordan rules, you had to hack a Shaq. That's it. Put that big man to the line because he ain't making a fucking free throw to save his life. Unless he, surprises you on that occasion that he does actually make some. But which brings us to present day and episode 3. This is the first retirement. Now, let's talk about that summer. Let's talk about what happened. That summer, it was the first three-peat. They had just completed their three-peat, their first three-peat, and it was the summer of 93. And unfortunately and tragically, in the summer of 1993, Michael Jordan's father, James Jordan, he was shot and killed. And I remember this, and I think it was a case that definitely, without a doubt, not only shocked the whole country, but I can only try to imagine the feelings that this family was going through. You got to understand that Michael Jordan's dad, he was missing not for a couple of days, he was missing for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And the last place he was seen, he was napping, literally in his vehicle along the highway. I think it was a rest stop, if I'm not mistaken. And it was in North Carolina on high. Yeah, it was on North Carolina, and that was July 23rd. Double check, yeah. They found his body in a creek in South Carolina. It was actually found by a fisherman in August that year. So July 23rd is when he was last seen of 1993. His body was then discovered in South Carolina in August 1993. The body was so decomposed that the coroner initially identified him as a John Doe. You know, summertime in the South, it gets a little hot down there. It's true. Lived in the South, lived in Florida, lived in Orlando, Castleberry, Altamont Springs, Longwood area, and then lived in Atlanta and Norcross. So I remember it very well and traveled many a time during the course of my life. So he did have a Lex Luthor, aka a red SC400 V8. They ended up finding this car. Windows were broken. And they found that at Fayetteville, North Carolina. Then they found the individuals responsible. They were two young men, Daniel Andre Green and Larry Martin Demery. They were arrested and charged with the murder. Authorities said that the two were connected to a recent spree of robberies and used a phone from Jordan's car. I still can't believe it. It's crazy. I remember when that got announced, like he's missing. Nobody could find him. And when they announced they did find him, and then everything started coming out. In the trial, the case was initially reported as a random carjacking. Some people, I remember this too, they speculated the killing was connected to Jordan and his gambling. And I think that they touched on that to maybe a certain degree in the documentary. But honestly, it's been a while since I watched The Last Dance, so I'm not 100% sure on that part and how in depth they went on the actual murder of Michael Jordan's father. But there was a lot of speculation. I remember hearing that because it was always talking. You know, when you're on top, people try to bring you down. They do what they can in order to try to say what they can to not only try to bring you down, but to hype themselves up and to get people to watch and listen. So sensationalize. That's what you do. That's what they did, and that's what happened. The yeah, it's crazy. Everything from gambling to mob to Jordan was in debt to this to that, but none of it was true. None of it was true at all. And in 2010, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, so that would be the NCBI, if I'm not mistaken, found that evidence had been mishandled or omitted. And in 2018, Christine Mumma, the executive director of the Center of Actual Innocence, said evidence showed Green did not commit the murder. He was paroled. As far as Demery was approved for parole in 2020, but his release was terminated in 2021. His next parole review hearing is in December, was in December of this past year. And that's what happened in the summer of '93. Basically, Michael Jordan's father was murdered due to a couple young men that decided to carjack him. Not did they know he was Michael Jordan, dad, James Jordan, when they did it? I'm sure he mentioned it to him, but I don't think at that point it really mattered. I don't think it really mattered. And I'm just looking right now to see whether there's anything that ever came out of the parole or any type of appeal. Let me see. August 18, 2020, the Associated Press News reported that the North Carolina Post-Release Supervision and Parole Commission granted parole to Demery. He was expected to be released in August 2023, though it was later pushed back by a year. However, on December 23rd, 8th, 2021, the publication reported that the commission announced the Demery's agreement has been terminated, effective immediately without giving a reason. It was stated that he would be reviewed again for parole on or around December 15, 2023. Let's see if I can find anything else. No. Michael Jordan did have this to say about his father's death. Michael Jordan got emotional when speaking about his father's death during the Last Dance docuseries in 2020. He was my rock, we were very close. He constantly gave me advice. He recalled during one episode, I remember in ninth grade, I got suspended 3 times in 1 year. My father pulled me aside that summer and said, look, you don't look like you're heading in the right direction, You want to go out doing all this mischievous stuff, you can forget about sports. That's all I needed to hear. 2020, in a 2022 interview with ESPN, Michael reflected on his father's death again, saying, he never met my fiance. He never got to see my kids grow up. He died 93. Jasmine was a year old. That's his daughter. Marcus was 3. That's his middle child, whatever. Excuse me. His daughter is his middle child. Marcus is his second oldest. And then Jeffrey was 5. That's the oldest. However, he reminisced about sweet memories he shared with his dad, recalling how the two loved watching Western films together. I love me a Western too, Michael. I get you. The thing we do, we'd stay up all night and watch cowboy movies, Michael recalled, adding that one of his dad's favorite movies was 1992's Unforgiven. Everybody remembers his dad with good old Clint Eastwood. Yeah, damn good movie. Clint was in that. Morgan Freeman was in that. There's Gene Hackman was in that. There was more than just those 3. It was an excellent movie. If you haven't seen Unforgiven yet, I don't know what it is that you're waiting on, but yeah. So, according to what I've been able to find, even 3 months ago, was it a lifetime case? Moment of truth? No. So, no, nothing there. Is their release date? He was denied each time, yada yada. So, and that was back in 2021. So, I'm guessing since it says that he wasn't paroled and they were going to push it back a year, and that was in 2023. Now it's 2024. I would assume, based on that information, that we should hear something coming up next month and go from there. But to my knowledge, the 2 individuals, Larry Demery and Daniel Andre Green, I can't see anything that they were both convicted of killing Michael Jordan's father. And to my knowledge, there's no releasing or anything else. So we'll leave it at that. So now, my what if. What if Michael Jordan's father had not been killed? Would Michael had stayed on the Bulls, which we're going to say yes, and would the Bulls have been able to go back to the NBA Finals? I would say yes. Teams that took their place in those 2 years were, first we had the Knicks, and then we had the Magic. And they both lost to same team coming from the West. That would be the Houston Rockets with the Dream. So my question is, What if Jordan didn't retire? Would they have been able to beat the Rockets in the 94 and or 95 season? And that's one of those what ifs. You know, you could sit here and contemplate it all you want and go back and forth, look at the rosters and see who was on what team and whether or not, getting four in a row is tough. Phil will tell you that. Phil will tell you that all day. But Mike never had an opportunity to go for four in a row. You can say that, well, what about the time before he won his first one? Well, before he won his first one, he hadn't won any. He didn't win anything before one in 91. He went 491. You had the Pistons go back to back in 1990 and then in 89. And then prior to that, you had the Lakers in 88 and 87 go back to back. Before that, 86, you had the Celtics. 85, you had the Lakers. 83, 84. 84, you had the Celtics. 83, you had the Sixers. 82, you had I can't remember if it was the Celtics or the Lakers, but Lakers had 5, Celtics had 3, Pistons had 1, and the 76ers also had 1. So the Bulls and Jordan, they joined forces after he was drafted at the Summer Olympics in 1984. So from 84 to 2000, Michael Jordan had never made 84 till 1990, he had never made a finals appearance. He'd been in the playoffs with the Bulls. He'd accomplished some things as far as personal achievements, gathered some stats, taken his team to the playoffs and helped them advance. But it wasn't until 1991 where that team was ready to compete, and they ended up going to the finals for the first time, and they beat Los Angeles Lakers in 5 games. They dropped the first game in Chicago, which everybody was surprised, couldn't believe, but I remember watching that game. It was a great game. They lost the first game to Lakers in Chicago and then went on to win the next 4, and a gentleman's sweep, as they call it. And then 92, you had the Blazers, same thing, 6 games, if I'm not mistaken, on that one. No, that was 5 games. That was a 5-game series. And then in 93, you had the Suns. That was a 6-game series. But against Barkley, who was the MVP that year. That's Jordan, which some might argue Jordan should have been the MVP that year. But back to the answer to the question, what if? I believe that the Bulls would have won 1 out of the 2. And I think their best chance would have been the 94 one. And I say that because they were still fast-footed, faster than they were. As you get older, whether it be as an individual, as a team, as an organization, whatever. In this case, the team and the individuals that play on it get a little bit older, you get a little bit slower in most cases. So, and the other thing is you didn't have Clyde as a Rocket yet. You had Akeem. So we already had Jordan versus Drexler in the Portland series in 92, along with Terry Porter and all the other individuals played on that 92 Portland, like Cliff Robinson, etc. So, like I said, I think they would have won in 94, 95, hard to say, but it would have been difficult, which would mean that they would have won, which is not impossible. It's not improbable. I mean, it's definitely not impossible. It is improbable, but I wouldn't say highly improbable, because the Celtics, with Bill Russell, won 8 straight championships. So, could the Bulls have won 8 straight? It's probable. It's not impossible. Just saying. That's my what if. I think they would have went 50-50. Jordan, if any player ever gave Jordan a hard time on the court as far as competition goes, and somebody that Jordan would admit would be a very worthy adversary, it was the Dream, without a doubt. And there's no shame in that. But that's my what if. I think they would have at least gotten one more ring that way. And as I mentioned before, they would have got one more ring for sure for those other 2 years before he came out of retirement again against the Spurs. That's what I think. So one way or the other, I think Jordan would have ended up had nothing happened and transpired the way it did. What if, of course, can't go back and put the toothpaste back in the tube, but if we could, that's what I think. That's what I think. Those are my thoughts. Please feel free to leave comments down below. Let me know what you think. And once again, I appreciate you guys' time on this beautiful Saturday, wherever you may be. And once again, thank you very much for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, please hit that like, share it, and notify. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. It's me starting all over, but I got time. So thank you guys again. God bless. And we'll talk again soon for part 4. That's right. There is one more part to this story, and it's going to be probably my favorite episode to talk about. I'm looking forward to it as well. And just to touch on anything NBA wise before we go, and I'll say this as far as last night's games, I mean, you know, listen, I don't think, in my opinion, and I'd rather do this on a live, that I'm not comfortable with a leg that's giving me a hard time. So that's why you're not seeing me on the camera at the moment, because I'm not in a vertical sitting position laying down, not because I'm lazy, but because leg issues. Last night's games, we had the Nets visit the 76ers, and oddly enough, unbelievably, the 76ers were able to pull that one out 113-98. Celtics, no big surprise, were able to beat the Wizards. I watched that game 108-96. The first place Warriors in the West were able to take out the Pelicans 112-108. The Trailblazers fell to the Rockets 116-88. Ouch. Ooh. The Hawks went into Chi-Town to face the Bulls, but could not win. Final score 136-122 in favor of Chicago. Then we had Milwaukee, Giannis, Dame against the Pacers. Tyrese, Emhard, and the gang. This time, Doc was able to get some together and come out with a W, 129-117 Milwaukee. The Dallas Mavericks and the Denver Nuggets. Good game. I remember watching this one. I got NBA League Pass at $16. If you guys are interested in it, I was gonna, if you enjoy basketball, not necessarily NBA basketball or WNBA basketball or college basketball, just basketball, then you don't mind watching ball at all. You know what I'm saying? So it's nice to have it there. College season's getting underway, so plenty of ball to watch. Of course, this League Pass is exclusive to the NBA. That's what they broadcast. But that Nuggets Mavericks game, I was super surprised that it turned out the way it did. But there again, they're two very talented squads that I expect to have several more meetups in the regular season, which I know they will, and then come postseason, we'll see who's there. I don't doubt that either team is going to be absent. And then last night's final game, the nightcap, the Kings, Clippers. Clippers on top 104-88 tonight. And starting here in the next 2 hours, all these are Central Time. We got the Knicks visiting the Jazz of Utah. That's 4 o'clock Central Time. We got the Pistons traveling to go play against old cities, one of my favorite teams, the Magic. At 6 o'clock, we got the Grizzlies, up and coming, nice young new team. Zach Edey, told you about Edey, but you know, Edey's the real deal. Ain't no joke. And I'll tell you what, Edey's bringing that smoke. When he's on that court, man, you could see it the way he plays, his style of play. Scottie Pippen the second or Scottie Pippen Jr., whatever he goes by. I got two of his autographs. One when he was drafted by the Lakers, and then one when he signed with the Wizards, and he signed it the second, not junior. So I'm going to say Scottie Pippen the second. But that game's tonight. That's at 7 o'clock Central Time. That's in Chicago. We got the Hornets visiting the Bucks, and that is going to be also 7 o'clock Central Time. In the West, we've got the Trailblazers going down to Houston. That's going to be 7 Central. We got the first place Warriors going down to Texas to play the Spurs. That's 7:30 Central. And tonight's nightcap, which I will be looking forward to seeing as well, is going to be the Nuggets traveling to Los Angeles to play LeBron and the Lakers. So we'll see how that turns out. I know the Nuggets had a tough game, and the Mavericks, they were a force to be reckoned with, and we'll see. The Lakers have some fresh legs. They haven't played in a couple of days. Matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, the last time they played was against the Magic, and they ended up losing that game to the Magic, who were short Paolo Banchero, in addition to being away. So they were in Los Angeles, and I'm correct. They did lose to the Magic 119-118 in Los Angeles without Paulo. So we'll see what happens tonight. I think it'll be a fun game to watch. And then we'll just double check the standings real quick. In the Eastern Conference, Cavs 16-1, Celtics 13-3, 9-6 Knicks, third place, 10-7 Magic in fourth place, and then from spots 5 through 10, you've got the Heat at 6-7, the Bucks at 7-9, number 7 Bulls at 7-10, number 8 Pistons at 7-10, number 9 Hawks at, you guessed it, 7-10, and at number 10, the 6-9 Hornets. So no team in the East that's in 5th place to 10th place has a winning record, not a record above 500 in the East from spots 5 through 10. But like I said, wait till we get to that 20-game sample size and we'll have a better idea, though we have a pretty good idea now of what we could potentially expect from for the rest of the season from some of these respective teams. Then, in the West, it's like the total polar opposite. Spots 1 through 10 are filled with teams that are all above 500. Spots 11 and 12 are both teams that are at 500, and 13, 14, and 15 are the bottom feeders of the bunch. In this order, the Trailblazers at 6-10, the Pelicans at 4-13, and the Jazz sitting at 3-12. At the top spot, we got the Warriors 12-3, 8-2 in the last 10. Yeah, I guess that would be right. I was thinking it was a 7-3, but yeah, the last 10 it would have been 8-2. Followed by the Thunder sitting at 12-4, half a game behind. Then Rockets right there. I told you guys. Told you about the Rockets. Between Sangoon, between Jabari Smith, between Dylan Brooks, between the coaching of Ime Udoka, you've got a really, really good squad of young talent that's not afraid to run with anybody. They're a lot of fun to watch. So I'm looking forward to seeing how far they can go. 12-5 is where they're at in third place. Fourth place Lakers right now, 10-5. Fifth place Clippers, which I can't believe it, but it's true. No Kawhi, in and out with Paul George. Terrence Mann has been there. Got DeAndre Jordan and Zubac underneath. So it's been interesting. but they're sitting at 10-7, fifth place, and then sixth place, the Nuggets, 8-6, little underperforming. And for as far as the team goes, individuals though, Joker, best player in the league, hands down right now, no doubt. If the season ended today, Joker would be, I would almost say unanimous MVP, but he would definitely be MVP, averaging a triple-double currently. So, amazing stats for Jokic, but he's an amazing player. He doesn't have, you talk about intangibles and those variables that aren't measurable in most cases with athletes such as like a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant or a Will Chamberlain or a Bill Russell or a Pete Maravich or the greats of the greats, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. They had that it factor, and they also had that fear factor, that dominance in their own way. I can see the exact same thing with Jokic. He doesn't have to sit here and take 2,000 shots or 2,000 free throws in order to be that guy, in order to dominate. This fool comes, plays basketball part-time, and otherwise he likes to do a little drinking, mess around with his horses. He's like an equestrian, so it's cool stuff. Now we got the Suns sitting seventh place, 9-7. Super Dave, I'm rooting for KD, Book, and Beal, so we'll see what happens. In eighth place, we got my Grizzlies at 9-7. Rawr. Ninth place, Dallas Mavericks, 9-7. Their big three of Kyrie, Clay, and Luka. And then around out the top 10, we've got the T-Wolves, Ant-Man, Rudy G, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, the trades that they made right at the beginning or right before the season started so far. Being in 10th place, you're doing a little bit underwhelming work. You need to do better. But still plenty of time left to go. And Timberwolves sitting at 8-7. But all right, guys, it's your boy Max. I'm out. Expect to go live again. I didn't make any picks this week as far as NFL goes. And if I do it, I'll go on another episode later today. Do that. I don't want to mix the basketball and the football, but I'm going to get back on track, schedule. Also got some other things in the works. So stay tuned, stick around, and thank you again. Guys, have a great day. See you later. Peace.
I got broads in Atlanta, just to throw me in the family. Credit cards and the scammers, getting no licks in the bank. Legacies.